This is the thing that many brands get wrong. They look inward, what we talked about before. They look inward at themselves and they say, well, what's interesting and entertaining about us? What's interesting and entertaining about, as you said, a SaaS product for productivity. And the truth of the matter is there really isn't much entertaining about you, and that's okay. You don't have to be necessarily entertaining.
Oh yes, this is the Hardcore Marketing Show. I'm Casey Cheshire, your host for this epic journey. Today's show is sponsored by Ringmaster, on a mission to launch B2B podcasts that create relationships, generate revenue, and drive growth. Ringmasterlive.com. Bam. All right, I hit the button. I feel like the spaceship is coming down to the planet and the big brain aliens are about to hop out of that ship and teach us something new. I can't wait to introduce my guest today. He's an absolute legend. He's a marketing leader, a thought leader, a community whisperer, a speaker, a brand architect, a mentor. He just is teaching people around and around, a top voice on LinkedIn. Thousands of followers over there. He's worked with crazy cool brands like Duolingo, which my son is addicted to, Liquid Death, Converse, Dr. Squatch, you name it. But he's worked with these brands to create ads that are remembered, not just seen. And we'll talk about the converse of that too. Author of Entertain or Die, co-founder and strategy partner of Small World, Dan Salkey. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. That was almost a Khaleesi-esque introduction. I don't think I've ever had that many titles levied against my name and that many kind of accolades. So thank you very much.
Breaker of chains.
Breaker of chains. Yeah, breaker of ads.
Breaker of chains. King of the Andals. Dan Salkey, welcome.
Lovely to be here.
Awesome. Well, in that tradition, I'm going to pass you a broadsword. Not really. It's actually a different kind of weapon. All right. Here's Thor's hammer. You got it?
I got it.
Wow. You just, ladies and gentlemen, listening, one-handed grabbed Thor's hammer. Dan, take Thor's hammer and smash for me some kind of marketing myth, a bogus strategy, misconception. Set the record straight once and for all.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for passing me Thor's hammer to break this myth. So my myth is that a lot of people think boring categories and boring products are hard to make entertaining and creative marketing for, but they're totally wrong. I actually think that is the greatest possible opportunity that you have in marketing to stand out from the rest of the pack. We'll talk about some of the research that my company has done into entertainment brands in a little bit, I'm sure. But when you look at that, the outlier brands are all from boring categories. So the likes of Liquid Death, if you look behind, what their brand actually is, it's as a product, it is canned water, probably one of the most boring products you could market. And then you look at the likes of Duolingo, for instance, it's language learning apps. Inherently a boring category. There is no excuse for not being an entertaining brand today. It just requires the right investment, the right theory, and the right practice.
Damn. So there's hope. So someone out there listening, they have a manufacturing software product that runs on Windows 98 and their brand is like pixel art and man, it's commoditized. You're saying there's hope.
100%. I mean, we just released a new campaign today, actually, for, and again, I'm sure my client won't mind me saying this, a traditionally boring category, cloud storage software. And we've done a very entertaining advert borrowing 90s kids' TV shows and TV commercials to hoodwink parents into believing they're watching a commercial for a new kids' toy when really we're teaching them kind of a lesson about this kind of like evil toy Nimbo, who is kind of an evil cloud, perhaps like the likes of a Google Cloud storage software. So there are opportunities in everything to borrow from the world of entertainment to make your brand more interesting and more entertaining. I mean, another anecdotal example, like just today, I've been flicking through TikTok, and I don't know if you get these, but there's so much great content coming out of Chinese factories at the moment. There's a guy that I follow, I can't remember his name, but he does these hilarious videos of like the latest products that he has at these Chinese factories. But he's effectively a stand-up comedian. Like he's doing these like stand-up bits about products that they manufacture in their studio. I'll have to find the link and we can put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no excuse basically.
Oh man. So why do people think that, like, what's the origin of this myth? Why do people think that it is going to be hard?
Yeah, I think naturally as marketers, and to be honest, as human beings, we like to put things in buckets, right? It's the same thing that we do with selecting agency partners. We're privy to it all the time. You want to have your social agency, your influencer agency, your creative agency, your performance marketing agency. And in the very same way, when you think about brands in certain categories, you tend to look inwards at the category rather than outside at what's happening to define what you do, right? So you say in automotive, for instance, there's a reason why all those ads tend to feel the same. So like, well, other auto brands do things like this, so we should probably follow that same principle. Or, another offender is perfume adverts. They're always these nonsensical things with like a celebrity in them, right? That just don't make any sense whatsoever. But they all kind of follow the same convention. And I think, to be honest, that eventually boils down to the fact that no one really wants to get fired from their job. Most people want to just shoot for the middle lane. And the best way to not get sacked is by, well, effectively kind of just converting or reverting to the mean, right?
Wow. I've never thought of that. But yeah, I mean, I've seen that classic car commercial where the thing's going around the S curve on the hills in California. And then the perfume ad. You oh, blah blah blah. Oh, this smell, the stupid yeah. Maybe I'm not the target audience too, but yeah, it sounds when people are repeating each other, they're playing it safe so they don't get fired. I've never thought of that before.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And yeah, it's also the reason though that some certain brands who fight against that have such a brilliant chance to succeed, and they are succeeding.
Yeah, and you really stand out too. Everyone else is doing the blah 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 commercial, and you just step it up. I was thinking about this morning. I don't know if I have. Do you have Aflac? Have you heard of those guys?
I have we don't have them here, but I have heard of the Aflac duck is a pretty famous asset, right?
I mean, even the name Aflac, like without the duck, you're like, what the hell company is this? And like, how do you be proud of that? And you're like, it sounds like a duck is talking. And they're like, well, there we go, man. It's a duck.
Totally, totally. I mean, I'm surprised. They must at some point had an idea to get Ben Affleck into some of their ads, or one of the Afflecks, or the whole array of Afflecks, and play off of that somehow.
Oh, that
Um,
would be fun.
Yeah, but there's actually some really good research, and again, we can put it in the show notes, but,
Mhm.
about the resurgence of brand mascots, and we can talk about it a little bit in the context of Duolingo as well, but, brand mascots fell away over the last couple of decades and definitely have, died a bit of a death. I mean, Duolingo literally died a week ago and got resurrected. But there was this guy called Steph Hammerlink who did a short YouTube documentary on sort of the rebirth of mascots, and I think we're seeing them come back in force in a very different way. But we are seeing them kind of come back in force in entertainment, in marketing, and beyond. And yeah, I can probably touch on some reasons why we think that is, but
How are they coming back and how different?
we're just seeing brands adopt them a lot more, and I think people also are happy to receive them a little bit more. I think they became a bit of a gimmick within marketing, definitely, and people as such saw them as a bit of a gimmick. And when we went into this era of kind of authenticity, and I do that in inverted commas because I think it's kind of faux authenticity, and we had kind of the era of purpose, right, and brand purpose, and marketing and advertising in on a whole became quite worthy. I think brand mascots, as I said, seen as a gimmick, seen as something quite fun, fell by the wayside. But now I think we've entered this new era where people really do see not just marketing but entertainment at large as a form of escapism. And in that world, absurdism is front and center. So you see McDonald's, for instance, bring back Grimace, and lots of their other archival kind of mascots. You've obviously seen the rise of Duolingo. There's plenty of others that kind of fall under that banner. But I think the way that they're different, the way that they're coming back differently, and this is there's a number of reasons why this is possible. Advents of technology and social media allow us to do this in different ways, but there's a lot more lore built behind these brand mascots and characters. Previously they were resigned to the front of pack on a cereal box, or the Michelin Man. Obviously had an appearance in Ghostbusters the film, but was kind of seen as just on the front of a travel guide, and seen as like effectively a glorified logo, right? But today I think these brand mascots actually have life kind of breathed into them. They have storylines that are recurring. They have agency. They go and speak to customers effectively across social, obviously, but they're interacting with customers, and customers feel like they're part of their story as well. They feel like they're adding to the life of this thing, day by day, and it's a lot more effective than a company logo, a corporation, an entity that you feel like you can't really connect with. So yeah, I think that's why they're coming back in a big way.
Man, I'm excited for that. That sounds more fun. I bring the fun back in.
100%. Yeah, I think that's Yeah, rule number one of, I guess, anything in life is if you're not having fun, why are you bothering to do it? Yeah, I'd 100% sort of stand by that testament, and the same goes for marketing. And there's a way that you can set yourself up to have fun. I think within the organization, as long as you have the right kind of guardrails and people who are in charge of coming up with fun ideas are left to come up with fun ideas. I think that's one of the big things about a business like Liquid Death. The reason they can consistently win the internet day after day after day is because they have a very split. If you think of their marketing team as a brain, they have a left side of the brain, they have a right side of the brain. Um, Left side of the brain is your traditional marketing team who's meant to make sure that distribution is done correctly. They make sure that customer research is done. They make sure that all of the boxes are effectively ticked. And then the right side of that team are creatives from outside of marketing who don't ever do marketing. They really do entertainment, and they have an ex punk rock band member. They have like showrunners from within Hollywood. They have like Adult Swim. They have an animator from Adult Swim. Lots of different people who are paid to come up with great ideas and not paid to fill out spreadsheets effectively. And you wouldn't want those people to be touching your spreadsheets. You wouldn't want them anywhere near your finance department. But equally, I don't want my CFO anywhere near signing off my next greatest creative idea. And I think that's where a lot of businesses go wrong. Creative actually, and sometimes because it is such a big investment, creative actually has the most scrutiny, and everybody suddenly thinks they're a creative director within the business and wants to contribute feedback, which is a nightmare.
Everyone thinks they're a creative director. Yeah, totally get that. Um, well, now if I were to, crack open your skull and examine your brain and watch it as you're creating some of these campaigns for your clients, what would I see as you're beginning the process?
Yeah, I mean, we have sort of a five-step process when we go to create any piece of work. Naturally, we start always by sort of we call it mapping, fandom mapping. So again, sorry to go back on exactly what I tend to do with clients. We seek to kind of make brands more entertaining, and to us, brand first entertainment marketing is effectively any piece of comms that tries to get owned and earned attention from an audience. So not attention that you can buy, attention that you have to earn in some kind of way. So inherently, it has to be entertaining. It has to be gripping. So I think the first step of that, and this is the thing that many brands get wrong, they look inward. What we talked about before, they look inward at themselves and they say, "Well, what's interesting and entertaining about us? What's interesting and entertaining about, as you said, a SaaS product for productivity." And the truth of the matter is there really isn't much entertaining about you, and that's okay. You don't have to be necessarily entertaining. I mean, again, you look at some of the very best comedians, they're great not because they look inwardly at themselves, and I think actually great comedians eventually who become bad comedians are the ones who become quite narcissistic, but their brilliant ability is in analyzing the things around them and making that entertaining and playing off of that with humor. So the first thing we would say is, create a fandom map. Look at people who are likely to use you as a product, and then look at the things that they find interesting and entertaining, and look at the way that they perhaps use you. So again, McDonald's have done a brilliant job in recent time with their fan truths kind of campaigns, looking at all the different ways people eat McDonald's and use McDonald's, even if that isn't how McDonald's would want you to eat McDonald's, like dipping your fries in a milkshake or complaining that the milkshake machine is always broken. Like those types of things, those are the things that people are actually talking about and the things that people find entertaining and interesting. So you need to play off of those. But then I would say, yeah, in that fandom map, you want to go one step further. You want to not just know what they're saying kind of about you and what the fan truths are about your brand, but you also want to look at what are the adjacencies, right? So if I was, doing the marketing for Roblox or Fortnite or Minecraft, I would look at what are the adjacencies to players who play Minecraft. Maybe they're into Dungeons and Dragons, right? Maybe they're into a particular entity of like comic book, for instance. Maybe they play a particular sport, like maybe they're playing Quidditch, for instance. Maybe they're playing quite a niche sport, or they're into another
Right.
niche area of fandom. And then I would look at those fandoms and say, well, this is how we grow our brand. These are the things that they find interesting and entertaining. How do we give back? How do we put more into that fandom? So, for instance, a brand like Duolingo, when they partner with Game of Thrones and want to engage with Game of Thrones fans, they might create a course for High Valerian because that is something that Game of Thrones fans would find interesting and still plays into their brand for sure. But that's kind of what it's all about, is kind of adding to people's fandoms, understanding that culture has gone niche. So you're not going to have that big water cooler moment anymore. The only way you're going to have that is if you buy an ad during the Super Bowl. And even then, I would argue that moment is fleeting and gone, here today, gone tomorrow. So what you want to do instead is build this patchwork of fandoms from people that you know are potential buyers of your brand and of your product, and create this world of lots of littles, is what we call it. Lots of little campaigns working with lots of different segments of your audience around their fandoms. And then, yeah, to be honest, I've spent a lot of time on that step because that is actually I would say, the most important thing to understand. And then we'd go into sort of our cycles. We'd create ideas off the back of those fandoms that are built for entertainment and built for the brand. We would make those ideas. We bring ideas to life with sort of our perfectly matched makers, people in our roster that can get things done. We've got a brilliant head of production called Ryan who can piece these things together. And whether it's an activation or whether it's like working with a sunscreen brand to make like a sorbet sunscreen, or whether it's working with Oatly to get a bunch of creators to we literally just did a campaign with them where somebody created a SUV out of Oatly milk cartons, which is, yeah, one of the more impressive things of late that we've put together. We'll go out and make these things out in the world that we believe will be genuinely entertaining. We share those ideas. We're really is I think is another really important thing to note is too often we don't really think about where our idea is going to be shared out in the world from the beginning of it. I actually think Mischief in the US, MSCHF, are masters at this. They always feel like part of the idea is how it's going to be shared. And it's either because it has some talent, some inherent talent or interesting person built into it who'll get PR ability. They just did a thing with Casey Neistat, for instance,
Mhm.
with Mercedes, or there's some kind of incentive for the person who sees it to share it. So the Big Red Boots is a good example of something that they did, and they gave out a number of those boots to sort of fashion influencers around New York Fashion Week, which started the kind of flywheel of people wanting those boots. So we always try to think about how this thing's going to be shared from the get go. Um, and then, yeah, the last step of that is measurement, and I think we can probably talk about that a little bit. But
Yeah.
one of the main reasons we created this piece of research called Entertain or Die, which came out earlier this year with our partner Tracksuit, who's a brand tracking company, is because we saw that there wasn't enough research done into tracking entertainment first brands and whether their entertainment value actually drives business results. So we also do that with a lot of our clients. Is help prove basically that the entertainment first work they're doing, which doesn't have your traditional performance marketing dashboard because you're not putting loads of paid spend behind it, actually has an impact, and actually is moving the needle basically with your audience and goes beyond kind of like reach and impressions.
Yeah. That makes sense. What kind of things did you see with your research? I'm sure you just did anything surprise you from it?
Yeah, there were some really interesting things. I mean, the main thing, as we spoke about at the beginning, is this idea, this myth, as I said, that boring brands can't be entertaining, and only entertainment brands are entertaining. Of course, there were some big brands, entertainment brands like TikTok, uh, Nintendo, Roblox, Marvel, the types of brands you'd expect to be in that top 30. But there were also brands like Crocs, there are brands like Duolingo, brands like Liquid Death, which again, if you look underneath the hood of how those brands are built, or what those brands do, they're in inherently boring categories. So I think that was a big thing for us. I mean, the amazing thing was like we looked at it, and the top 30 brands in that index who we deemed to be the most entertaining, 96% of them had revenue growth last year, and two-thirds of them had double-digit revenue growth, which again proves this value that entertainment brands grow quicker. If we looked at like the bottom 10, rather, that story was not the same at all. So it proves that those entertainment brands are growing faster, basically.
Wow. Yeah. So it pays to be entertaining. Um, which is, I think, I mean, the more we get people talking about that, the better, because then we'll just have much more entertaining marketing, much more entertaining everything, and I'm all about that.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, just another stat to kind of add into the mix for like the inverse of that. So you might say, well, I have the money for paid media, so I don't have to necessarily do that. I can just follow, what I can just make my advertising as good as I can get it. And I'm going to pay for Super Bowl spots, and I'm going to pay for, in particular, I would say, uh, meta ads. Um, I There's actually a paradoxical thing that has happened, and this is part of the research we looked into as well. Over the last 10 years, cost per acquisition on platforms like Meta have risen 222%. And the success of those social platforms is actually to the detriment of brands who are trying to advertise on those platforms. Because despite them saying, in their dashboard, you're getting X amount of impressions for what you're doing, the competition that are on those platforms is far greater than ever before. There's now 5.2 billion social accounts, I think, in the world, which is
Jeez.
a crazy number across all of the different social platforms, and you're competing with every single one of those platforms effectively, or every single one of those channels effectively for someone's attention. So even if you are paying for that sliver of someone's attention, right, you're lost in a scroll of so many more people. So why do something that you need to put that paid spend behind necessarily and have a lot more rules and regulations and restrictions around than do something which you can truly own, and earn someone's attention?
I mean, well, talk to me about uh, when you try hard to make something entertaining, it almost becomes anti-entertaining.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's the same thing you say about the funnies, right? Like funny people are effortlessly funny, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, I slightly would challenge it. I think there are definitely systems and processes you can put in place to make sure that um, uh, things are entertaining. And the people we obviously work really hard to make things entertaining, and so do all the brilliant brands out there who do
Yeah.
great work. And people who make Hollywood films and Netflix shows, and they put a lot of work in there. So it is hard, I would say, as in it's hard work. But I think you're right. Like there is that adage of like too many cooks in the kitchen.
It's like you trying to force something to be viral, right? Can
Yeah,
you How do you intentionally make something entertaining without crossing the boundary of just being like the out of touch person trying to make something?
yeah. I don't. Yeah, I don't think you can. So this goes back to that lots of littles discussion that we were talking about, right? There's this amazing econometrics specialist called Grace Kite. Again, something I can provide for the show notes, but she wrote this piece called "We Live in a World of Lots of Littles." So because media is fragmented, as I said, we've now got 5.2 billion social channels. There's 600 TV channels. Our attention is split in so many different places. It's no longer good enough to just put all your effort into doing one big thing. We now live in this world where, whether we like it or not, we might put something amazing out, and you know it could be bad or good, but the very next day it's kind of lost in the news cycle effectively. And that's one of the terrible things I think politically about in the world, where we see horrible things every single day, and they seem to pass through the news cycle super quickly and out. But the same kind of concept applies to creative work. So as you said, if you put too much work into something and put overt effort into it, the expectation is a lot higher, right? But the result could still easily be the same because we live in this media fragmented world. So what you need to put more effort into is actually living in this world of lots of littles, taking one thing that you did and splicing it into 30 to 50 pieces and finding different ways to disseminate that. Again, the likes of Duolingo in this world are brilliant at doing that. That's how you kind of have a viral hit, is by effectively buying as many tickets for the raffle as you possibly can. And I think that's sort of the logic that I would apply to it.
Right. Instead of trying to like go big, we're just trying to get on base. We're trying to the small like, and consistent. And if one of them takes off, great. But the whole point is that there's so many of them.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's, and it goes counterintuitive to, in marketing, at least, a decade or so ago, people said, "Oh, we should be doing fewer, bigger, better," right? And I'm by no means suggesting that people just do more stuff and just put it out into the
Mhm.
world, more slop, as we say. It's all about creating minimum viable creative ideas, right? Think about what is the minimum viable thing that I can create. I mean, on lots of these platforms today, like lo-fi is good. Like you should lean into lo-fi creative methods. Like you should be shooting stuff on iPhone. Jack Moose just did a whole campaign shot exclusively on iPhone that still felt super premium. Like this is about approaching creative and production in a way that allows you to put out lots of littles. To your point earlier, yeah, sometimes it's counterintuitive to put too much effort into a piece of content. We've had it ourselves on clients where we've filmed something and it feels too polished, and we've had to do it again with shaky camera angles and something that felt a lot more like native to platform.
Got it. Got it. Damn. Well, dude, like my next question really is like, who are you? Who are you? How do you know these things? Can you take me back in time? Little Dan, did you know you're going to be creating all sorts of really interesting littles, right? All the littles. Like, did you know you're going to be masterfully painting the brush and all that? What was it like?
No, I mean, yeah, and I literally was thinking about this again this morning to really rack my brain to be like, what is the earliest memory I have, I guess. Uh, I mean, to be honest, the early like, when I was a kid, I was thinking about all the things that I kinda loved. I always loved so when I was reading books, I loved Willy Wonka, loved Roald Dahl, and
Same.
all of his books.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of that weird, almost like there was a lot of like almost sadistic things in his books, like those old school fairy tales where it was like, a cautionary tale basically, whether you're looking at like James and the Giant Peach, or you're looking at Willy Wonka or Matilda or like any of those books, they're almost like a little bit sinister with some of the themes that were in them. And then when I looked at like, I was obsessed with comic books, but when I liked comic books, I was reading like the X-Men. I wasn't like a Superman fan. I never liked like the shiny, polished hero. I quite like the anti-hero. I like Wolverine. I like Spider-Man as well, who's like this kind of imperfect character who's trying to juggle a lot of things. And I think that's when I look back on it now, like looking at what we're doing in Small World, that's what I have probably been influenced throughout my life, like trying to do things a bit differently because there's so much of the like shiny, polished, generic Superman, Superman archetypes out there, but there's not as many of the X-Men and there's not as many of the kind of Willy Wonkas, I guess. These kind of like rare breeds, people who are like a bit weird and a bit wonderful. So that's why that's originally part of the reason why me and my business partner wanted to set up Small World because we're like, this is a shop like no other. Otherwise, we wouldn't bother. Which is a Willy Wonka quote. And it's this idea that we could create this roster of people within our business who come from the world of entertainment. So going back to that Liquid Death example, right? The writers who've worked at the Onion, or the people who've been in a punk band, or the people who could never work full time at any organization probably because they'd go a bit insane and a bit nuts, but they could easily jump in and work on briefs and have a lot of fun working with brands. And I think selfishly, we never were those rock stars. I guess we never were those kind of full bleed Wolverines. But we really appreciate that talent and know how to look for it and want to work with those people and have them around us. So yeah, that's I guess when I really think back to some of my early moments, how that's affected what I do now.
Man, right? And then just giving yourself permission to just create, you know?
Yeah,
That was Wonka's thing too. He just made it.
yeah, yeah.
Do you have to be passionate about the product, or are you passionate about something else?
I'm passionate about our business, and as a result of that, I'm definitely passionate about the product. But to your point, I'm not a creative. We have a brilliant creative partner, Sadia,
Right.
who's fantastic, and like in my mind, she's our Willy Wonka. Like she, as much as I want to think of myself as Willy Wonka, or maybe we're all Willy Wonka in the partners or in the business, but again, going back to the earlier point, like you let creative people get on with being creative and get out their way. I'm just lucky that I hope I've sort of figured that out as a formula,
Yeah.
and kind of allow those people to do what they sort of see fit. So yeah, I guess that's what I would say. I'd like to put myself on the record and say I'm by no means the world's best creative, and I'm not that finance director who's trying to get involved in making creative decisions. Um, but I do love getting really interesting people to look at briefs, and I think that's probably the bit that I love the most in the business is like finding new talent that has created something weird and off the wall that has nothing to do with branding and marketing, and finding a way to put them on a brief. Um, that's the really interesting stuff, and that's what I'm really passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Well, my next question for you is a bit of a hypothetical. Hope you're ready for this. You see, I may or may not have a time machine over here in New Hampshire.
Right.
So you come visit, do a little, event, maybe get some clients, over here that need some work. So you come pitch them, but drive up north to New Hampshire, hang out. It's in the backyard, covered in a tarp. So we use this time machine, and it's a particular kind of time machine. And you go back in time and you meet yourself. Like early 20s. You've just you just cracked into this company, and you're just starting out. What kind of advice would you tell yourself?
It's a great point, and I actually think the advice I'd tell myself is not related to the business at all. It's actually counter to that because I've
Mm.
realized since starting the business how little time I have to do other things. But when I was growing up, I always thought I would be a writer of some kind. I mean, I guess I still am. I write a lot for work, but My granddad was a author and a poet. And I always thought I'd follow in those kind of footsteps until I realized sort of how cripplingly impossible it is as an average bloke in a post-capitalist society to be an author. So I sort of stopped writing because in my head it was like, well, why should I keep writing if it's not a viable career option, basically? And that was probably one of the stupidest things I did at that point, because before that I would write creatively, totally for myself. So I'd probably say, keep writing, write for yourself, write creatively, write and bring it to life. Importantly as well, write if you've come up with a mini script idea, bring it to life. Like we're already thinking about got this thing called Ideas Incorporated at Small World, which we're going to launch soon, which is effectively like backing other creatives' ideas with a small pot of money and trying to show how, a great idea, again, the idea of minimum viable creative, like how a great idea can be brought to life for not, the world, effectively, for not that much money if you've got the right approach to doing so. So I think that's what I'm preaching now to people. I'd preach that to my younger self. I think it's even more important in kind of like an AI ridden world, right? Where there's more and more slop out there to like keep your writing skills on top. I saw this really funny, I even saw this funny TikTok, this Scottish girl who said, what's happened to having a think? I think everyone just default, when someone starts thinking about something, they just default to ChatGPT. Like, what's happened to just sitting for a second and having a think about something before you sort of ask ChatGPT for it? And I think it's true. I think the only way we're going to keep that up is if we practice those skills effectively, or you are going to lose them, and your brain is going to be ChatGPT, basically. So
Yeah.
I think that would be my advice to myself, but also to everyone listening.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, just take a second, right? Like, it's okay to be bored sometimes,
That's true as well. Yeah.
right? And it's also okay to just, struggle with a thought before
Yeah.
immediately going to a resource.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm terrible with that. And like, podcasts, for instance. We're on one right now, right? I can't really go to bed anymore without falling asleep to a podcast. And every spare moment I've got an AirPod in my ear. It's true. Like we need to find better ways of not having some kind of stimulation at all different times. But I haven't quite cracked that one yet.
It's true. I've definitely myself, yeah, fallen asleep to an audiobook or whatnot, can be nice, but you also need some quiet too.
100%.
Yeah. Cool, man. Cool. Well, hey, where do people, if they want to reach out, they want to connect with you, where do you want them to go? How do you want them to contact you?
Yeah. So the best place to like follow my writing, after I said I don't write. But if you want to follow my research basically into entertainment brands and everything that we do, follow me on LinkedIn. So Dan Salkey, Salkey spelled Salkey, like Sal from Impractical Jokers, and then
There it
key,
is.
like you're turning a key. So that's the best place to follow me. And then, yeah, if you want to download that research I was talking about, Entertain or Die, I'm sure we'll put it in the show notes, but you can also go to our website, meetsmallworld.com, MEET smallworld.com. And there is a little tab on there that just says Entertain or Die, but we'll put it in the show notes so people can just click straight through to it. And yeah, other than that, I'm always, my door's always open if anyone wants to chat about any of this. I'm always learning from other people too. So yeah.
Hell yeah. Dude, fantastic. We'll definitely put all that in the show notes so people can click right on through. Man, dude, thank you so much for coming on here, hanging out, talking some tales, telling us about the inner workings of how you make these things actually entertaining. Um, Giving us the courage to have brands to be entertaining again. I love that, man. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. And I need to hand you back your hammer. So
Yep.
I'm gonna whatever.
Awesome, man. And those listening, if you learned something, and I freaking know you did, because I literally have 2 pages of notes over here, front and back, then share this with someone else. Be a thought leader. Who needs to have a little bit of that liquid courage, like Liquid Death has, to be able to make an entertaining brand. But don't forget the lot of littles that go into some of these campaigns. This is a masterclass, Dan. Thank you again, man.
Thank you very much, Casey.
All right, everyone. This has been a very cool, exciting episode of the Hardcore Marketing Show. We will see you all next time.